So if you look at the past century, we see that college admissions have become much more merit-based, much more based on student test scores, such as SAT or their high school GPA. Also, we see that colleges have become much more stratified in terms of their student test scores, meaning that the gap between the most selective and the least selective colleges has become quite dramatic. So in my research, I work with my co-authors Lutz Hendricks and Tatiana Koreshkova to look at the implications of de-emphasizing student merit in college admissions and favoring low-income students. This is something we see happening in the US. Several universities have moved to test-blind admissions. This is also something we see across the world. For example, in countries such as Chile or Brazil, we see that public universities set quotas for low-income minority students. In China as well, public universities actually have geographic quotas for students. So what are the costs and benefits of de-emphasizing student merit and favoring low-income students in college admissions? The idea is that it would reduce earnings inequality and improve upward mobility. Now, why is that? It's because on average, low-income students tend to have lower high school GPA and lower SAT scores, and perhaps weaker involvement in extracurriculars. This makes their college applications weaker, and as a result, they don't have as much access to better universities. They end up with lower lifetime earnings, and it's harder for them to improve their income relative to that of their parents. Okay, so now let me tell you about the cost of de-emphasizing student merit. The cost would be the potential loss of aggregate human capital. And what do I mean by human capital? It's just the collection of all skills and knowledge of our college graduates. So if high-scoring students have more to gain from more selective colleges, then allocating those limited spots to those students would help maximize the aggregate human capital. De-emphasizing student merit would work against such an allocation, potentially resulting in the aggregate loss of human capital. So how do we conduct our economic analysis? We build a model of different types of colleges and different types of students. In the US, there are actually about 3,000 colleges. 1,200 of them are two-year community colleges. The rest are four-year schools. In our model, we are going to look at broader categories. So the top category of colleges is going to include Ivy League schools, small liberal arts colleges, and most of the public flagship universities. And the bottom category is going to include all of the two-year schools. We are going to focus on a cohort of students that went to college in the early 2000s. About half of those students entered college, and about half of those who entered graduated. If you want to read more about my model, click on the link in the description below. So most students who attend college, they gain more from attending better schools. They tend to stick around longer, and they learn more, and they graduate in greater numbers. However, higher quality colleges also cost more. What is interesting is that we find that higher scoring students actually gain more from better schools. So in relative terms, lower scoring students will emphasize other factors when they select colleges. These other factors that are non-financial. For example, they may choose to go to a college because it's a local school, or because they like their football team, or because their friends are going there. So how does preferential treatment of low-income students work in our model? The change in college admissions that we consider is entirely hypothetical. It's not based on real-world experience. So what we do is we start with the baseline ranking of college applicants, and then we give students from the lower half of the income distribution a leg up in admissions. So that effectively expands the set of admitting colleges for them. So what do we find? We find that this change is highly effective at improving upward mobility. And contrary to our expectations, we actually find that the aggregate loss of human capital is almost zero. Now, why is that? This is because there are enough high-achieving low-income students that take advantage of this preferential treatment. And yes, high-income students, some of them lose their spots in more selective colleges. So there's a lot of redistribution from high-income families to low-income families as a result of this change, but the aggregate loss of human capital is none. I'm Oksana Leukhina, an economic policy advisor at the St. Louis Fed. Visit stlouisfed.org for more information.